In the past few days, Apple, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and other companies have all banned Alex Jones from using their platforms. Also, Twitter purged various libertarian accounts. Instagram temporarily banned Tommy Robinson. Facebook took down a GOP candidate's ads for allegedly being offensive. And Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says mass censorship is needed to ensure, quote, the survival of the democracy, end quote.
Well, Twitter has long denied that it is biased against conservative accounts. That's obviously a lie. It's always obviously been a lie, and now it is a proven lie. A new report by Vice found that the Republican lawmakers on the conservative accounts wouldn't show up in the search bar when users searched for them. That is censorship, obviously, and it was intentional. Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida was one of those conservatives shadow banned by Twitter. He just filed a complaint against the company with the Federal Election Commission. Congressman Gaetz joins us tonight. Congressman, thank you for coming on. So I guess the first is a factual question. You're certain that this happened to you and it was intentional?
Well, I'm certain that there were only 4 members of Congress who had their voices suppressed on Twitter: Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, and Devin Nunes. So that'd be one hell of a coincidence. My suspicion is that if people were effectively communicating a conservative message, they got caught in Twitter's troll trap. The reason that I think that that is illegal is because that it gives advantages to our political opponents. It gives them access to the platform that we don't have. If Twitter was a billboard company and they gave Democrats access to their billboards and not Republicans, that would be an illegal corporate donation to the campaigns of Democrats. Here, instead of the billboard, it's the auto fill-in function as a part of Twitter's search feature that wasn't available to me, Devin Nunes, Mark Meadows, or Jim Jordan, and it's available to Democrats.
We generally don't trust governments to make decisions about the kinds of opinions that ought to be aired, or what things are false and what things are true. Why would we possibly trust Silicon Valley executives who have even less accountability and less transparency, no democratic accountability, in fact, to make those decisions on these platforms that have, for better or worse, become our public squares? I think it's incredibly dangerous. And if we think that it's only going to be used in ways that we like, just look at the history of censorship. That's never how it works.
You believe that the FEC can remedy this?
They absolutely can institute fines, just like they could institute fines and punishment against any company that illegally makes a corporate donation to a political campaign. Here, the corporate donation is allowing Democrats and the people running against me specifically to have access to elements of the search feature that I didn't have access to. And why, Tucker? Why? Twitter has said in their official response that it was my behavior that resulted in this. I don't know what behavior that is. So are we really going to trust tech companies to be able to just decide with no transparency what behavior limits someone's ability to amplify their message? That sounds like the Tech Tyranny series you did a couple months ago is coming to life before our very eyes.
Well, it clearly is. And Twitter is a fairly small player in this world. It's a failing company anyway. Google dominates all of tech. And in fact, it's the portal through which almost all human information flows. So if Google were to hold things back in search or put its thumb on the scale in any way, they could have a huge effect on our society.
Did you know that Google got started thanks to a program run by the US government? Google wouldn't exist if it wasn't for American taxpayers.
Congress exists to make sure that the public interest is represented, and yet I've never heard a member of Congress say, we're going to get to the bottom of this, we're going to break up Google, we're going to fulfill our oversight role here. Why not?
Well, frankly, too many members of Congress just don't understand the gravity of the issue. But now we're the ones that have the targets drawn on our foreheads. And so I think that you'll see more engagement from the Congress coming forward. A reasonable libertarian might ask, why shouldn't I just leave Twitter? Why should I have excessive government regulation? And it's important to recognize Twitter and other social media companies use the federal government to get rid of lawsuits that they don't want to have to defend against. And they use a provision that requires them to hold themselves out as a neutral public forum. So Twitter and Facebook can't say on one hand, we're neutral and thus we shouldn't have to respond to lawsuits, and then on the other hand, tell me and other outspoken conservatives that our behavior results in suppression on their platform. Right. They can't have it both ways.
Mark Zuckerberg has always claimed that Facebook was a platform for all ideas. Fine. You know, in doing that, he says, I'm not a publisher, I'm just a means of people putting out their messages. You know, whatever you think of Alex Jones and InfoWars, and you know, you may say, hey, this guy's a bit out out there. The point is, he's got a big following, he has an opinion, and if you believe in free speech, if you believe in your First Amendment rights, people should be allowed to do this. I would say that by banning Jones, by shadow banning many others, Facebook and others are now effectively becoming a publisher, and that means, because they're taking editorial decisions, they should be open to being sued as other media organizations are.
For conservatives in general, there's this dogma that says that government has no business telling private companies what they can and can't do, what ideas they have to associate themselves with. We just had a big debate over, for example, whether a bakery can be forced to make a cake in commemoration of a ceremony that the owners of that business find personally offensive for religious reasons. But the only exception to that, I think, on sort of by consensus, is when a company becomes more than just a company. They have monopolistic power. And in the case of companies like Google and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg said a few years ago, we're basically like a government. We make our own laws that govern our community. 2 billion people use Facebook. And when you look at what these companies control, it's not just widgets, right? It's data about us and the flow of news and information and debate. To vest companies with this kind of power that's essentially limitless, with limitless control to do whatever they want, to do it in secret, to have secret algorithms that control what we see and what we don't see, is a serious menace to our democracy. And I think whether you're a free market conservative or kind of a leftist or a liberal, nobody should like companies like this having monopolistic power greater than the governments of nation states, which is what they have.
Let me suggest, though, that some of the argument by Twitter and what they're doing is they're saying that these comments violate their standards. And if we open it up to, let's say, lawsuits for libel, wouldn't it make it even more difficult to have speech? Wouldn't more people be banned? Wouldn't there be more people suspended?
No, because if you're a platform for all ideas, you are not a publisher. That is the point. And what Zuckerberg and the other tech giants are trying to do is they're now trying to have it both ways. On the one hand, they claim, we're not publishers, we're not open to libel because we let everybody give their opinion. But on the other, they now, in a very sinister way, are starting to ban and shadow ban. What these
social media platforms have done is they have absolutely, with their digital advertising, sucked the life out of traditional journalism, so that, the traditional journalism outlets are on their last legs. They're teetering into extinction. And they're the places where they actually can get sued. If they do defamation, if they publish libel, they can be held liable, but these other platforms cannot. So between their market power, which I think is something that the DOJ should look at with antitrust regulation, and with their, frankly, false advertising to being open to everybody, which Twitter promises, Facebook promises, and YouTube to a certain degree promises, although they don't pretend to do that anymore.
Take, for example, on Facebook, PragerU, an organization that I've spoken for. I've been to their events. These are not.
They do great work.
They do amazing work. Yeah. I mean, their videos have been seen by tens of millions of people. They now, on Facebook, have 88 of their videos that are now very much put to the back of the list. They're very hard to access, including ones on Christianity, for goodness sake.
Yeah. You have Facebook censoring Elizabeth Heng's ads when the incumbent's not censored. That is, to me, virtually an in-kind contribution by the platform to one side over the other. We can't have that in our system under our current laws. I'm not saying new laws. I'm just saying apply the current laws to the situation.
Google once said its mission was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. Its motto was, "Don't be evil." But now they floated off in a giant balloon of arrogance, untethered to any notions of loyalty or ethics. Google is helping America's #1 enemy, the evil communist dictatorship in China, to oppress its own people through censorship, literally the exact opposite of what Google once stood for. Remember, too, that Google has built an artificial intelligence center in Beijing, even though the Chinese regime is openly saying it will use artificial intelligence to achieve military and economic dominance over America. On top of that, Google recently pulled out of helping our own Defense Department with artificial intelligence. So Google, born of a US government program, won't work with our government to defend democracy, but is falling over itself to work with the world's worst despots to crush democracy. I know the word treason is thrown around too much these days, But that seems like a pretty good definition of it to me.
What is needed now is a Bill of Rights for people using the internet. You know, let's give people access, let's give people rights, and if we can't get that, let's make sure we now redefine Facebook, YouTube and Twitter as publishers who are liable, as are Fox News or the Wall Street Journal or anybody else, to the content they put out.
Back in February, we drove around our nation's capital with 2 Android phones and found that even without a data network connection and in airplane mode, the 2 devices tracked our every move. And now, a new report from the Associated Press confirms it's even worse. Even when you turn off location tracking, as Google told us could be done, it may still be tracking you. It's a bit of a don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain here. You can turn off or even pause location history, but using other Google apps like Search or checking the weather on your Android phone will pinpoint your location based on your latitude and longitude, which is accurate to about a square foot. Now, that data point is then saved to your Google account. There are some 2 billion devices that run Google's Android operating system and hundreds of millions of iPhone users that also make use of Google for maps, search, and even photos. Now, Google says they're being upfront with users. If you want to shut off this other location data collection, you have to go into the Web and App Activity settings and disable it there. If you simply turn off location history, it still stores your location data. It just doesn't place it on your timeline for you to see and delete. Confused? That may be the point.